back. We're moving into our final segment for today, and we've been joined by representatives from the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry to talk about the new business manifesto. And joining me in studio, we have Arturo Vasquez, President, and we also have the Chief Executive Officer, Kim Aikman. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Now, let me start off, because whenever you hear the word manifesto, it is usually tied very often in the Belizean context with political parties. Why come up with a manifesto at this juncture, and how important, and perhaps how did you get to actually producing it? What was the process like?
You should take the process.
Well, actually, this isn't the first manifesto. We did one in 2008. We did one in 2012, and this is our third in 2015. And how we went about doing it, we met with our members. We had small sector meetings so that we had representatives from all the sectors, and we took their concerns and their issues into consideration, and we came up with the manifesto, which was circulated to the members. From this manifesto, we also garnered questions for the PM's forum, which we submitted to the Office of the Prime Minister, and we are hoping to get some answers.
Now, when you start talking about the business community coming together, how easy or difficult is that process? Because you made it sound like, you know, it's just automatic now that you produce this manifesto.
It's not very easy, because, as you know, we have members from all spectrums of all of the political parties, and everybody has their own issue. This manifesto is not partisan, it's not political, it is on issues that will make business better, that will make business sustainable. These are policy changes that the Chamber would like to see, that members would like to see, regardless of partisan political belief, that we would like to see, that would make our operating environment easier.
Now, as a tool for advocacy, and given the fact that this is your third manifesto, did you take a scorecard at the end of the second in terms of looking at whether there are some emerging issues or some gains that you've made, and to see how policy has evolved with time under the governments to project the best possible path forward?
In the 2012 white paper that we submitted to the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition, we did an update to it that can be seen on our website. And yes, there are some issues that are being taken into consideration. One of the ones that come to mind is that I think in 2008 and 2012 we had advocated for tax reform, for there to be a comprehensive tax review. Well, that process has now started. So there are some inroads that we've made. And if you look at our website, belize.org, we have an update to the 2012.
There has been, I think there has been some efforts by government to make changes, but going back to the reason for what the Chamber is doing at this point, really, I mean, following up with what Kim said, it is something that has been a practice of the Chamber. And we believe also that at this point, where there is a general election, just a few days away, I think that it is quite a good time to engage government and the other political parties in sharing with them what the business sector has seen as important pillars. And as Kim also mentioned, we had the different sectors meeting, service, industry, commerce, meeting with their particular areas to get a feedback from what they see, or at least sharing with them the pillars we had suggested and see how they could strengthen them. Because of course there's a whole lot more that could be improved, but we just figured that we would pick 5 pillars that are pretty important. So also I think that the importance for the Chamber to be doing it at this time also is this public-private partnership that we keep singing, the PPP. in my view, that needs quite a bit more improvement to it. But I believe that it is something that the Chamber, as the organization it is, should continue to lobby for that public-private sector partnership, because that's the only way that we could move forward with business, private sector, and the government working hand in hand to make sure that the things that are important for business sustainability to be initiated and implemented.
Now, let's break it down from go into the manifesto rather, and break it down a bit into the pillars and why those are seen as priority areas for government going forward if the right environment is to be created for the flourishing of businesses.
Well, we can look at the 5 pillars that we had picked on. We had picked on e-governance, simply because we believe that with the accessibility to the internet now and the way that more business is done online, that it's an opportunity for government to be able to be transparent and accountable and open to the public. So we believe e-governance is a good one. The manifesto, of course, has a lot more details as to where we believe that particular opportunity or option could be utilized and taken advantage of. We also looked at corruption, which is obviously a word that we hear just about every single day. Corruption, again, we think that government has quite a lot that they could do to make sure that corruption is limited, because let's be honest, corruption is never taken away completely, but there's quite a significant amount of things that could be done. We looked at political and public sector reform. We looked at economic, social, and financial reform, and then finally we looked at immigration and enhanced legislative reform. The last one we think is also important because it has a lot to do with the human capital. Belize is quite limited when it comes to human capital. As you know, there's the skills and technologies that we need, and we believe that with a proper format put in place, both the educational and immigrational sector could really have a long-term plan as to what do we want when we look at a human capital pool. That's the word we use.
Now, let's delve in even a little bit deeper, because you've provided the skeleton of sorts to look at, when we talk about e-government, for example, what does that mean and why is that a critical part of the movement forward?
Well, I think that e-government will foster efficiency. You try going right now to register your business. I'll just use this as an example. If you have to go to Belmopan, to the registry, register your business, then you have to come back to Belize City, go to City Council, register for a trade license. All this is time and money and effort away from your business. If we had an electronic platform where I want to start a business, I will need a piece of land. I put in my application online for a piece of land without having to have any kind of ministerial approval, and then I get a number and I go and register my business. Immediately I get my registration number and my tax ID number. All that can be generated online to save time and effort. And also, if you have e-government, it kind of minimizes the corruption and the subjectivity, because I will not have any interaction with a person to say, well, if you get my papers for me in 2 days when it supposedly takes 2 months, I will give you something. It minimizes that. So that is one of the reasons why we're looking at e-government.
Are enough people, to the mind of the chambers, sufficiently online to actually access those systems and utilize them? Because that has always been a part of the challenge in Belize, connectivity.
There's a limitation to it, I would think, but I believe this is chicken or the egg, which one comes first, really, because if it's there, you would have to find the means and ways of doing it. I mean, BTL has quite an extensive infrastructure, and I think that it is available in most areas now, and I would think that the people who would need this obviously would, if they don't, they will probably find a way to do it. But I think it has to be available for people to need to get to it. So that's really how I would answer that question.
And on the the e-government, I see something that I like as well.
Procurement.
Public procurement website. That's an excellent one. You know, that can reduce the bureaucracy in government and that asymmetry between government and the people at large. It allows them to be able to put up contracts, put up bidding, transparent. It allows for that. And remember, not only the transparency, but the efficiency of how quick you can get things done. So with e-government, I think, or e-governance, or e-government, I think it's something that the government must consider, and I think it is something that could be beneficial to both sides.
All right. Corruption now, if we break it down a little.
As I said, the word just continues to be repeated on the airwaves and in the streets and in almost every day vocabulary. You hear it each and every day. It's a word that continues to be a part of it. We had listed a few options we believe can be considered, like the transparency on public bodies, which the Chamber is asking that the private sector should be involved or be a part of all these private sectors, government boards, statutory bodies, and state-owned private companies. BTL and BL are now privately owned, publicly owned companies, state-owned. And we think that with the private sector being a part of these bodies, it provides a bit more oversight, so to speak, for us to be a part of that. The national budget, we don't think that there is enough consultation by government. I don't think there is any at all. It's just government doing a budget, presenting it to the people, and that's it. We think that there is a need for it to be more open, more discussion with the private sector and with the opposition parties and everything to make sure that what is finally budgeted is something that has been agreed as wide as possible. So that's another one we look at. The reactivating and invitation of the Transparency International. The reactivating and expanding the scope of the Integrity Commission. In my words, it is a commission that is out of commission, you know. And there are others. There's the adoption of the UN Charter on Corruption and that CARICOM procurement charter that we think that Belize could join a part of that.
No, the government has signed on to the CARICOM
procurement.
The mechanism for follow-up on the implementation of Inter-American Convention Against Corruption. We have signed on to that, so we need to enforce it, and that's within the framework of the OAS.
So there are entities that we think that if Belize becomes a part of it, it helps for that transparency to be visible and also to show the commitment of government to want to be accountable. So there are all these entities and bodies that we think that the government is serious about reducing corruption, being more transparent. All these options are there for them to be a part of. So that's really what we're saying to them.
And it's more enforcement of what already exists.
Right. For the most part, yes.
And pillar 3, political and public sector reform.
Yes.
Wow.
Well,
that's a biggie.
Right. And you see the first bullet there is campaign finance reform. One, it has to be public. 2, it has to be limited. You cannot, be getting, because as the saying goes, he who pays the piper calls the tune. So that has to be out there, and people need to know, and it has to be limited from one individual or one entity. That's, and then legal reform, you see that penalties for some are not existent. We also have a lot of ministerial discretion to be used there. So those are some of the areas that we would like to look at. Electoral reform, there is, I believe, or there is the perception that the voters list is terribly compromised. We need to look at re-registration and cleaning up that list.
Some people have even gone as far as to talk about redistricting and all of that in terms of looking at the size of constitutions and representation country. So is that a part of the call as well?
Yes.
Okay.
We just think that each and every Belizean should have access to ownership of land. It is something that it's there for us, regardless of social, political, and economic status. And of course, if you go farther down, then you get into the the appointment of the 13th senator. The structuring, the composition of the Public Accounts Committee, and the empowerment and expanded scope of the Auditor General. These are 3 things that are so important
In
to
terms
political
of
and
the,
public reform.
Sorry, in terms of the Public Accounts Committee, the Chamber had made the recommendation that we have the 3 social partners on that committee, 4 government representatives, and 2 of the opposition, 2 members of the opposition. So the government, in our view, would still have the majority. They have 4. The opposition has 2, and the social partners has 3. And if you look at the records of the Senate, how we have voted, because I think the Prime Minister has said that he will not have a pack where the government is in minority. He's assuming that the social partners will always vote along with the opposition, but the records at the Senate show that that is not so. The social partners have voted based on the issue, not necessarily, sometimes for the government, along with the government, sometimes not along with the government. So I think that this is a big part of the corruption, the Public Accounts Committee reconstituting it. It gives that the air of transparency for seeing how your money is being spent. The Public Accounts Committee needs to look at that, how your money is, all of our money, because we're all taxpayers. And I think as citizens we have to recognize that it's our money. Even if you don't have a business, when you go and you pay GST, you
Absolutely.
pay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And the Auditor General, of course, that has been a major issue, simply because they're not current.
They're not
number
current
one.
because they're just not
Functioning.
functioning but limited. There's limited budget, there's limited staffing, we just think that a body like that needs to be, first of all, completely independent of government, and also there should be sufficient resources for that department to function properly. It needs to get into the different departments, it needs a huge expansion. That is a significant part, and I would think that if you have that resource, then I think that it is a lot easier for the Auditor General to be up to date.
And the 4th pillar?
Economic and social and financial
Yes.
reform, yeah. Well,
There's some suggestions we're making there in regards to doing business in a better way, like the collateral registry, to make sure that your creditworthiness can be easily accessible. That's one of
So you don't have to be the hard-paced star of the
well,
week. It
it's
can
not
be a
only that.
national...
It's just that if you as a young business would like to go to the bank to access financing, you have to put up every single thing you own, your mother owns, your father, everybody who is willing to sign on for you. Because the banks right now are more geared towards consumer loans, not necessarily commercial loans, and you have to be able to prove to them that you are able to repay this loan. So if you have a collateral registry or a credit reporting system, it will allow them to be able to see that in your personal life you are able to pay back, or you have been good, so maybe they will look at giving you a lower rate instead of a high interest rate. So that's the purpose there for that.
I like that one. Especially for, as we're talking about entrepreneurship for so many young people, financing is a major concern. And
of course, crime is a problem. Crime is a cost, really. I think it's priority now for every business to establish or engage in a security component, for safety.
Crime is a real cost.
It's a cost. It's absolutely a cost, and we think that more commitment from the government needs to be put into the political, the judiciary system. I think that by making successful prosecutions, that can be significant. A significant improvement to that section.
yeah.
Then reducing taxes, cost of doing business. Everything, as you know, goes into the price. Utilities now, we think, can be looked at in the aspect of restructuring for different industries. You can have rates more specific to particular industries. We think there's a whole lot more that could be done there. And of course, this overall tax reform study that has been in the pipeline for so long, we really believe that the entire tax structure has to be looked at to see how that could be better change and be more efficient and more cost effective for us.
And then strengthening the financial services sector?
That was a section that was suggested by the services, the banking sector.
Offshore banking.
And it seems to be that we should be more, there's a whole lot more that can be done in relation to our laws, in the accounting portion of the laws, that apparently we are behind. That's the understanding I get from that. If we are more up to date, we could maybe move that industry a whole lot further and more regionally as well. We need to be to realize that we are not just operating within Belize, but we're internationally. We need to be more effective.
And I think we did a good job of the immigration and enhanced legislative reform. So the next question for me has to do with the fact that this political season that we're in, and it is the chamber, you time it to get conversation, but how do you let people look seriously at the manifesto above the din of the political rhetoric that you have at this juncture?
Well, we can try our best to see how we can. This is absolutely not political any at all. This is something that we believe is need for business sustainability. Unfortunately, we are in a country where almost everything is politicized, and we try our best not to get that done. What we have done in this case, as you probably know, is that today we have a mixer that the chamber has invited all three parties, three leaders, to be represented there, and the idea there really is for us to present this manifesto to them, give them an opportunity to comment on it. We would want to know whether they would be willing to adapt it into their manifesto. So that's what we are doing today. And of course, it's also an opportunity for these political leaders to be able to not only speak to these pillars, but also speak to their political agenda and what they see as necessary for that public-private sector partnership. So that's what we're doing today. That's making it as public as we can. We're also doing a bit of media rounds. We're here today. We're also on CREM, and I think we're trying to cover some of the other media houses during the next couple of weeks, I would think. So, and there are other ways that we think that this can be addressed. I think we're hoping that the political parties will look at these pillars one by one, and to specifically state whether they are willing to adopt these pillars, and the timeline and all of that.
If
so
they were to be elected,
right,
when would they imagine they could implement?
So what's your own timeline in terms of getting feedback from them, in terms of an implementation strategy, should they be elected?
Okay, well, this was circulated to them before, so they have it. All three leaders have it.
So they're not showing up cold turkey?
No.
And
well,
being
they shouldn't be showing up cold turkey. And we would expect them to tell us today what they think of it, how they can implement it, if they agree with it, if they don't, or if they have something better, or what their plans are as regards to our pillars. We would also like to get from them some kind of indication, and at least within a week, because it's, as you can see, it's 5 pages. It's not, and we purposely did it this way. It's not a thick document, so I think it's something that they can go through. And as the president said, it's not a partisan effort. This is a national effort for the overall environment in Belize.
Now, when you look at something like this, and we've been talking about the economy and the challenges with investment, both local and foreign, with movement into particular areas that we see as emerging, how do you get the conversation to move beyond just the members of the chamber and beyond government to have some kind of buy-in from the public in terms of bringing pressure to bear to make sure that they understand what these pillars are and how they can impact daily living and the quality of life in Belize?
Through forums like this. That is why we get out on the media, because this is not only a business manifesto, this is a Belize manifesto. And through forums like this, I think a lot of people don't realize that I am a taxpayer, or I am an employer, because I have somebody in my house that's helping me with housework, children, whatever. So all these areas will affect them. and affect their sustainability in the long run. I think through forums like this, we need to let Belizeans start thinking that I am a part of this puzzle. I don't have to sit there and wait for any individual to say, here is some money, go and buy some groceries. I can inject in this process, and that's what we would like to see them do.
Past the mixer today, what is the hope from the chamber?
Well, what is the hope? We are hoping, first of all, as I said today, to make sure that we can address these 5 pillars independently and to see whether we can get that commitment. We have been speaking among ourselves as to see whether we could perhaps generate something of a report card to see, whether what the political parties have agreed to buy into, what they have not bought into, and see if we can at least have that within the next couple of weeks before election.
And hold them accountable.
And hold them accountable to it. So, and then after election, to see which party makes the government, then I think that we then need to engage again to make sure that we can re-emphasize the importance of this, and hopefully things change. I mean, William, and we have had so many promises by political parties. It's so easy for you to pick up a political party's manifesto and look at it, and you can actually look at it and say nothing on this manifesto did happen. That's unfortunate. I don't know when we will reach that point of saying, I will hold you accountable to this. Because I don't think that we have reached that point yet, of being so forceful on what you think is best, so forceful on what you have agreed to. Take, for example, a 13th senator. That is something that was promised, implemented, and it's just now to the point where the government has decided that is not something I need to look at anymore. That was a promise made. Now you hear the other parties are saying it is law. It's just a matter of signing.
Of signing the commencement
order.
Right.
So where do you go with that? Do you take them to court? It is something simple as somebody making a promise to you, knowing what it is, and know the opinion is that is not in favor of me, my government. It's not about you. It's about you being kept accountable. And obviously, we agreed together that is one of the best ways to do it. You look at the Public Accounts Committee. It's a circus, really, when you think of it, of why one won't go, why the other one won't support it, and then the Auditor General again being so far behind in the audits. These are 3 significant pillars that could make government so transparent. So as we move forward, there has to be a way of government to be, lack of a better word, forced to do what they are supposed to do. We haven't reached that point yet. Hopefully we can. Hopefully we don't need to do that. Hopefully we get governments in place who are willing to say, we are here now prepared to do this partnership and to make sure that we are transparent, there's oversight, and let's move forward. That's what we're hoping could happen.
All right, well, we'll definitely remain engaged. I think this is a step in the right direction in terms of, and I like the idea of the report card to see where we are, because I think that's the part that usually is not publicized as much, where people can see governments being held accountable. And if we need that change, then that's one way to get it, or to trigger a mechanism to get it. Right. So thank you very much for joining me. Any final words?
Well, we're just hoping that we have quite a good turnout today. Our membership, as the CEO said earlier, this document has been circulated to the membership at large, I think to the press as well, and also to particularly to the leaders of all 3 parties who have been invited. Unfortunately, the government is unable to attend. We don't know if there'll be a representative, but we have taken it a step further, and we will make sure that this is personally delivered to the Prime Minister by myself, the President, and the EEC, to make sure that he also gets a chance to.
But you do have commitment from the other 2
Yes, we do.
parties.
We do.
Yes, we do.
Right. So today, with the membership there, we're hoping that there can be a good dialogue between both. It is nothing political. It is not a debate. It is simply putting these pillars on the table, asking the political parties to look at them to see if they would adopt them, if not, why they would not adopt it, and also giving them an opportunity to speak to the private sector as to their manifesto ideas and their way of bringing good business sustainability to Belize. That's really the focus of today.
All right. Well, thank you again.
Thank you
too.
very much.
Bye-bye.
We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we'll tell you why Marlene isn't here. So you want to stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages.